it's Matt Pinfield. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's called In a Lonely Place with Matt Pinfield. Song by New Order, a song by Smithereens, a Humphrey Bogart movie. What we're doing here is, we're doing things for musicians that are really struggling right now and people in the music community. We're raising money to try and literally help people out because people don't know where their next paycheck or their bill is going to come from. I mean, this COVID thing really derailed so many people, including me. I mean, everyone. But the truth is, for me, this is a godsend. It's a gift. It's a gratitude thing because I get to go on here, interview my friends that I love and musicians I respect. And we talk about how they're getting through it and also their careers and then the 7 records that literally changed their lives. I have a guy on today that I love so much. I always was a fan of his band, South Gang. Marvelous 3, I debuted them on MTV back in the day with Freak of the Week and all that stuff. And then we became friends. And he got involved in a record that I made when I was, A&R guy at Columbia Records, a band called Midtown. But we have a mutual, best friend, this guy, Jonathan Daniel. So it was this thing that we figured out that we're just music fanatics. We're like, that's who we are. And I'm very grateful for that, So I have Butch Walker with me, who I love as an artist, producer, songwriter, and one of the most beautiful human beings. What's up, Butch?
Matt, that just made me feel so good. I can go now.
It's true, man. I love you. Dude, your spirit has always been a part of the thing when I met you, and supported you from the beginning. And then we got involved in different aspects of our careers. But
I was definitely full of a lot more spirits back then.
Oh, yeah. I think we both were.
Yeah, we definitely were.
Yes, we both were. Oh, yeah. Anyway, but truthfully, Butch, it's amazing. You've become you found a way through everything that you've done as a great songwriter, a collaborator, a producer. You've gone through shit before, I talked to Aaron from A1 Nation when his studio burned down. Your studio burned down before anyone else's. That was a thing that we both, one of the things that's going on with me with COVID right now and all this is I realize that the material things aren't as important as the people I love, the music, the songs. But it's also, but it's a hard thing to go through. But you soldiered through it, and it was just amazing to me. And so I want to talk to you about what's going on with you right now? I mean, you have, obviously #1 alternative record with Green Day. Oh yeah, you produced that record, produced that album, and
Yeah,
all motherfuckers. When I heard that, I was like, yeah, it sounded like distortion and garage rock.
Yeah.
I know that Billy Joe said to me that he was kind of going for a Prince thing, but it was also a little more it was just fucking cool. Talk to me about working on that record.
Oh man, first of all, it was a dream come true to get to work with those guys because I'm a huge fan and I'm not very good at being that cool guy that's when I'm really into somebody, I can't just see them and go what's up? I'm not like that. I'm like, oh my God, I love your records. I'm into you, blah, 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 blah. No matter if it's actors or whoever.
We're not fakes. We're not fakes, dude. You and I are
you're kind of extroverted with your opinions on things as well. And I love that. And so when my manager, Jonathan Daniel, who was our correlation here, you and I, he started managing Green Day. And the first thing I did was I texted him. I said, you have to get me on the phone with Billy Joe. I have to try to convince them to let me produce him. And I don't ever do that with, when Jonathan has an artist, I don't invite myself to the party because he's managing some huge artists. And it just so happens that I've produced several of them. And that's not just because it's convenient and in the family, but it's because I love those artists. And Green Day being kind of one of my favorite bands of all time, he was able to get me on the phone with Billy, and Billy was in the right place at the right time in his life where he had been producing his own records for the last 10 years and was burnt out on doing it and needed some fresh perspective and some fresh ideas and but still be Green Day and be what he wanted and retain his vision, which is most important. If an artist has a vision to do something, I'm not going to derail that. And his vision was to make a record that was outside of the Green Day box a little bit, and still be Green Day, which I know that sounds like a puzzle, but it really was great because he just started sending me demos. And, you know, the first couple of things he sent me, I was like, oh God, this is so fun and so great. And I would put down some ideas and send them back. And, you know, he'd be in the Bay Area and I'd be down in LA. And so we would just go back and forth. And finally, and we just started really hitting off on each other's ideas. And then it got to talking to Trey and to Mike, and next thing you know, they're all down here and we're all crammed in this little room back here behind me, all plugged in. And man, it was one of my favorite records I've ever worked on.
You guys did it. No, what is it? 32 minutes, maybe 30, 10 songs. It's kind of cool because it brought everybody back to the Lookout days. But more importantly, it was just like a shift of gears. And they are really the sweetest guys. I mean, I love them. You know, they're friends forever. Worked on a lot of things with them.
Yeah.
You know, and played, you know, like I said, after I got hit by the car, Trey Cole pulls me aside and goes, dude, don't forget, it's not lost on us how hard you worked to learn to walk again and fucking lose weight and all this. Because you know, and it was just beautiful because sometimes you need to hear that from your friends. You know, you're having a bad week, whatever that is. But anyway, so Butch, you and I have a mutual person. Besides Jonathan Daniel, there's two people in our lives that we love so much. Jonathan Daniel and Leslie Fram. Now, Leslie Fram is, you know, she works at CMT. She's a brilliant woman, family to us. In Atlanta, of course, you know, you were down there. She was such a champion of yours. Tell me about.
I mean, I honestly can say that I wouldn't have probably met you and be sitting right here right now if it weren't all going back to this wonderful human named Leslie Fram. And Leslie, for anybody out there that needs to know, she's the head, like, you know, person at CMT that does she's like the music, whatever you want. I don't know the title.
Head of music strategies and everything.
Yes. Whereas in radio back in the 90s, she was the program director, which was the head person that helped program the station with their playlist, right? And so
99X, right? And it was like that station was so important. Even Elton John would come up there and bring his keyboards to like play piano and talk about Travis, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's something about owning Atlanta, and you know me, I'm born in Athens, Georgia, so you know the whole thing. But she's just an amazing woman, and she just loved and championed.
Yeah, so, she definitely took good care of me, man. She was I didn't have a pot to piss in, and nobody wanted to sign my music. Nobody cared. We were this scrappy band of guys in Atlanta that were wearing eyeliner and skinny ties and looked like, you know, like a band from New York in the late 70s, early 80s or something. And we're doing this like really kind of quirky power pop stuff, which it just wasn't fashionable at the time. And we didn't care about that. And she didn't either, because I walked into her office with this guy, Steve Craig, who was one of the DJs there, who did the locals only show on Sunday nights.
New York at RXP, you know, he was like my midday after me and Leslie.
Yes, and he was instrumental in this because he was a big believer in Marvelous 3 when he was a DJ at 99X and would play us on the local show on Sunday nights. And I went up there and handed him my CD at the time. There was a blank CD-ROM that had the name Marvelous 3 written on it. And he stuck it in at his cubicle in his CD player and started playing the first song, played about 30 seconds of it, liked it, said, that's great. And then he fast forward to the next song, and it was Freak of the Week. And he got to the chorus, and before the second verse even kicked in, he took it out and said, come with me. And he walked right into Leslie's office when she was in the middle of a fucking meeting. And I'm sitting there behind him like this, going like, what are we doing? And he goes, Leslie, you got to hear this right now. And Leslie said, let's do it. And so Leslie put it on, which you got to give people credit when they're in that world where you can be a slave to your, to influencers in radio and playlists and being, you know, tight with what you play. She took chances and was like, I'm going to break something local because I have local pride. And so she played it, and she played 30 seconds of Freak of the Week and said, this song's a hit and I want to play it on my station in heavy rotation. And I was like, please don't fucking be lying to me. Because I was like, my life has been, you know, it's the struggle was real for years and years leading up to that. And so she was like, nope, I'm going to start playing it tomorrow. And it went into rotation, and every record label that turned us down was offering us huge record deals, and it was crazy. And the song ended up being a top 5 hit and paved the way for everything, paved the way for me, for my producing career. Because of that song, I did that record and did that song in particular, all that in my bedroom. And because I could never afford to go into big studios, I always had to just like do it on whatever scrappy gear I had, you know, and which wasn't much. And so I ended up getting that, getting calls from artists that were, you know, from labels that were signing artists, going like, "Hey, we want to make a record that sounds like this record that you have for your band," and it just snowballed from there.
How did you and then you went into production, which was for me really amazing, and also co-songwriting. Obviously, you and I, like we said, Jonathan Daniel, a close friend of ours. But how did you make that transition where you decided, hey, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write with people. I'm going to collaborate. And then you wrote so many hits with so many people, and you continue to do that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I enjoy it. It was basically it was by accident, because after Freak the Week happened, that song from my band, The Marvelous Three, I got a call to do another band and work on a song of theirs. And then that song got bigger than the song that I had for my band. It actually went closer to number 1, I think. And then I started getting calls from everyone, like from, you know, Avril Lavigne, you know, pop stuff like that. And I remember when I got that call to do that, I came up and went to New York City and was in Koreatown and at the studio there. And she had, you know, just come off of selling, you know, 10 million records on the first album at that point, which was a massive, massive record. And
Complicated and all that stuff. Yeah.
And it was because of the stuff I'd done for the other band, the song that I told you I did, and then also this band called Simple Plan. I did a single for them. They happened to be on tour with Avril at the time, and they were talking me up to her as like, "Oh, you should get in the studio with this new guy named Butch Walker," and so it was between, you know, them and Evan Taubenfeld, who now works for Crush Management, who works for Jonathan Daniel. He was Avril's guitar player at the time, and also was like, he was also hitting her up saying I should work with her. And then I went in and wrote and co-wrote and produced a song called it was called what was the first one called? Don't Tell Me. And it became a song that later it was going to be the first single, but until then we didn't know that. And the label put her with all kinds of people, all kinds of big hit producers at the time and big names and stuff. And then she called me back months later. I'd not heard anything for months. And then she hit me back, because that was just a demo I did at the time up in New York. And then she said, well, everybody likes the stuff you did the best, so you want to get together and try to write and do another song? And I said, sure. And so we got together, and I had these lyrics scribbled down on a Chateau Marmont napkin. And they were for for a song called So Much for My Happy Ending. And that song became the second single and the first number 1 single. So that became a number 1 single for me right out of the bat. And that was the beginning of where it all, you know, started from there, with, you know, then Pink, and then Katy Perry, and then switch gears and Seven Dust. Injected was a metal band I worked with back in Atlanta.
For me, you did. Remember you produced that Midtown record for me.
And Midtown, who I love. And that was the beginning of me doing a lot of records in that scene as well, because that was early on in the whatever you want to call it, the emo world, you know. But I became friends with Gabe and Rob Hitt.
I love Gabe, you know that.
Yeah, all those guys. And so we just ended up you know, I just kept going and didn't look back. I opened up a studio in Atlanta and just started fucking making record after record and making my records and touring, and I'm fucking tired now.
You know, I gotta tell you, Butch, what's amazing is the thing about you and your international following has always been so brilliant. Like I watch people even back when you did and through Bohemian Rhapsody on the end of the one CD. I think it was a Japanese CD, right?
Yeah.
I played it on the radio at K Rock in New York. Before people were like, getting excited about Queen again. Of course I loved Queen. I saw them in 1976, Night at the Opera Tour, a little kid in the nosebleeds.
Damn.
Later on, Brian May, as you know, hired me to write the liner notes for the 8 CD box set called The Crown Jewels. But I just got to say, like when you decided to do that and break that down, it really blew people away. Like you're like, I'm gonna reconstruct this. Tell me about that. Like, was it because you loved the album so much? Was it just
yeah, Queen was one of my first loves. I mean, for sure. I one of the records we'll talk about, obviously, I wore
in like 10 minutes, but my thing is, I love that but your songwriting and seeing you live at like Irving Plaza in New York, your fan base is so devoted and beautiful. Is that one of the things that really, it's got to keep you going during these times? Because you and I you already went through that rough time we talked about. And when your studio burned down, you and I had this conversation. You made the record about it. You also made the record about life. You talked about life. You talked about you literally broke down so many things in your life through song, which was, for me, really, really therapeutic because I needed it through some rough shit. And whatever, but I mean, yeah, it's not about me right now. But I'm just gonna say, but I really wanted to say to you, like, what was that like at that period of time? Because Butch, we have to always grab inner strength. That's what we're going through now during this COVID thing. We're doing it for our families. We're doing it for the people we love. We're doing it for our friends. And like, I remember me and Leslie interviewing you in New York City, talking about when the studio burned down. And it ripped. It had something in my heart. I was like, man, Butch is fucking such a strong human being, like fighter. So tell me about that.
Well, I mean, it's very hard to go through any loss, whether it be loss of a loved one or loss of your house and loss of your personal items that you grew up, culminating this, like, amazing pile of gear that I'd worked with since I was a kid. My first guitars, every master recording I'd ever done since I was a teenager. When all that gets like taken out from under you in a wildfire, I look back on it now, and you're always like, why me, right? And then you go, because it was supposed to happen. You don't think it is, but whatever happened, when that tragedy happened, it opened up the floodgates creatively for me and emotionally for me, because I know in retrospect, before that had happened, I had just finally started getting successful after having no money and broke as a joke my whole life and not being able to, even ever pay rent or do anything. And then all of a sudden I've got like, 2 fancy cars and a bunch of motorcycles and a ton of gear. And it's this big nice house that's in Malibu, and like whatever, I'm doing fine now. But the problem is I couldn't really feel anything anymore. I was starting to get numb and desensitized and feeling like I didn't have anything to say anymore. And that's sad because I was still very young. This was after the birth of my son, who was only 6 months old when the fire happened. And there was just a lot of things going through my mind at that point about like, is music even it for me anymore? And that's fucked up to even think that now. But like I was thinking about just quitting and getting out. I didn't even want to do it anymore. And then the fire happened and I lost everything. I came back with my family from New York City from playing an acoustic show at Maxwell's in Hoboken. And all I had was the 2 acoustic guitars with me to my name. And that was it, in a suitcase. And I'm talking, you're talking about losing 50 vintage guitars and, 50 vintage microphones and drum kits and just crazy amounts of like personal stuff and family heirlooms from lost loved ones. And, you know, it was hard. It was a hard hit for the whole family. And so, but for some reason after that, I couldn't stop writing, and I didn't stop writing for years and years and years. And a lot of that stuff became more personal, and the most personal stuff that I had ever written for myself. And I think that connected, at the risk of sounding, you know, pretentious or whatever. I think it connected to fans on a much more visceral level, which was necessary.
And, you know, and that was the thing about all of it. Like, Afraid of Ghosts, like, I listened to that record. I loved it so much, man. I mean, of course, it was You Had No Heart to Speak before it, but I'm thinking, like, but there's different times in your writing, in your cycle of writing for yourself, that I realized that you have an amazing gift to be able to write with and for other people, but you can still pull it back and make it about you when it's the right time. And that's why Afraid of Ghosts, I was fucking in love with that album, dude. I gotta tell you. You know what I mean?
Thank you. That was that song that, you know, that song in particular in that album was all about my father. And my father had just passed away, you know, months before I made that record. And I couldn't write about anything except him and my childhood with him. And he was my best friend. And he died of pancreatic cancer in 2013. And it was just, that was a time when I needed music the most. And that record is one of my favorites. I don't think it's a favorite of my fans in particular, because it's a very sad record, and unfortunately they like it when I'm being silly, sarcastic, funny, loud.
Like better when you were in the beginning, right? Like, I mean, the solo records too. But at the same time, I think that.
Hey, if I had $1 though, Matt, if I had $1 for every single like fan that came up to me at shows and said, you know, I didn't like that record when you put it out, and I dismissed it, and then I lost my father, or I lost my mother, or I lost my grandmother, or whatever, and it's my favorite record of yours now. And it's funny, not funny, but weird how that happens, how it just takes, unfortunately, somebody going through the same thing I went through, and I did that for it to connect.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it exists.
Oh, I'm so glad it exists, man. And, you know, when the next record's coming out, American Love Story, you know, which is coming out in a couple of weeks. Like, talk to me about this record. Yes, tell me about the new record, American Love Story. I mean, you've always been able to get your finger on the pulse of things that get straight to the heart. And I love that about you, you know. But you're right. But you also have that sense of humor in other ways. So I've just always enjoyed your songwriting. And I've also seen how it influences other people that you worked with. But tell me about the new record. I really want to know about it.
Well, the new record is a rock opera, and I mean that's exciting maybe to me and maybe to you. I don't know about the rest of the world because it's not very fashionable to put out a fucking rock opera record right now. But you know what? I wrote this record and recorded it 2 years ago, and I sat on it, and I didn't even know if I was going to ever even put it out. I thought about just putting it out under a different name or whatever. I just was like, I don't know if I can put this out, and mainly because, you know, it's a rough go lyrically in a lot of spots. And the reason why is because it's from beginning to end, it's a love story about hate in America. Yeah. And I know a lot of people will immediately hear that word or hear the word America or hear the word racism and bigotry or whatever, and they'll just tune out because they don't want to be challenged or listen to that. They don't like it when their artists get social or whatever. But you know what? I couldn't write about anything else over 2 or 3 years ago. I was just sitting around just stewing about, you know, I grew up in the South. I grew up in rural Georgia, North Georgia mountains, where it was very normalized, including in my circles and including with me. It was normalized behavior to just be in on the, you know, the racist jokes, the bigot jokes, the homophobic, you know, talk. Everything was just so, it was so normal and so okay to be that way back then and in that small town. And it's still like that in a lot of places now. And it's still like that with a lot of people I know. And I just wasn't down with that. And I climbed out of that, you know, from my childhood. and I'm glad that I did. But you know, I just couldn't see myself putting a record out like that. But it got to the point where it, you know, when I started laying this thing down, I didn't know it was going to be a concept, like a rock opera concept record at all. It was just, there was a common theme running with the first few demos, and I sent them to Jonathan, my manager, and he said, "Sounds like you've got a rock opera concept record here." And I was like, I didn't think of that. And so it started, you know, it sparked my mind to like come up with characters and parlay this into a story. And so what it does, it goes through the story that's sort of in the timeline of my youth, and the soundtrack to it is, you know, sonically and production wise, is what I was listening to on the radio at those times. So it's kind of like late '70s through the mid '80s production.
Right. I gotta ask you about that. So like, you know, I think about the songs that were like, you know, out at that time. So I mean, we're gonna go through your 10 favorite albums in like 2 minutes, or no, your 7 favorite records, excuse me. But I'm just like, what was the thing when you had to draw influence and you had to draw inspiration from those songs? What were the songs or the artists that are part of American Love Story?
Well, when you listen to it, there's definitely a common thread of Fleetwood Mac going all the way through it, because I'm such a huge Lindsey Buckingham fan.
But I love it.
And Christine McVie. And I think the two of them together, you know, are magic. Everybody always thinks it's Buckingham Nicks, but I think it's Buckingham and McVie that are the sauce that make Fleetwood Mac so fucking good. And I was loving the production on all of those records, from all the way from Rumors all the way up to, you know, to Tango. Those were the records that had a sonic footprint that I loved, that Lindsey was chasing something that was new.
Yeah.
And you know, he was pioneering it for pop music, which was amazing. But it was just so much cool shit right around that time. I mean, I love the way that the sounds of these records, like, you know, everything from early Doobie Brothers records and
those records. Fuck anybody who talks shit. So
exactly.
Said I wasn't gonna curse. Said I wasn't gonna curse today. I wasn't gonna use the F word. But dude,
sorry, I've used it a ton already.
Yeah, Toulouse Street, man. I listened to that song.
Toulouse Street, yes.
God, on that album, because I listening to music, but the song is so beautiful. Something about it, you feel like you're on the streets of New Orleans, and of course, China Grove, Long Train Running. Those records, are Black Water. I mean, like, you know,
and What a Fool Believes. What a jam.
I actually like that stuff too. Listen, I make no apologies. I love the Michael McDonald era too.
Dude, there's so much of that on American Love Story. You'll hear it and go like, that's straight up Michael McDonald. And and a lot of Toto too. Like, people can, I mean, I get it, Africa Cute, it's back and it's big and everybody made that, but fuck it, I liked it when it came out and I like it again now.
Dude, Steve Lukather's one of the coolest guys, man. I've spent time with him.
He's the best.
He's the best, dude. He's got the greatest sense.
He's one of my biggest guitar influences ever. And I got to tell him that at NAMM show in January. And it was the coolest thing, because I came up and I just hugged him and I was like, you have no idea. And I can't wait for you. I want to play you my new record, because I copied your style all over it. There's Lukather guitar solos on every song.
Man.
He was so cool. And it was cool because he was a mutual fan, which blew my mind. I was like, how do you even know who the hell I am? That's so weird. But it was really awesome. And so those are a lot of the influences on that record.
And, you know, I love that. You know, it's funny how, like, we go back to the things we love growing up and other things. And we're like, sometimes you go back to records and you go, you know, this was okay with me then. Now I love it. Like, you go back and you find things that were just like, at the time, they were hits. And then you realize, God, I love that song. And now you know, and that was the way I felt about those later Doobie records. I love those records. And, you know, he was in Steely Dan too, and I'm a Steely Dan. I love Steely Dan. So,
anyway. All that, everything from yacht rock all the way to, you know, New York, new wave, all of it. There's just
total new wave. I love all that stuff. And that was,
I could go all day with you on music, bro. And I know
you and I can be, it's the best thing about us. Dude, you, me, and Jonathan, and like our friends in like a room, the three of us, he'd be like, Nick Gilder, rock me, and you know, like whatever.
We'd be
like talking about, you know, stars. You know, we'd be like, it would be fun. You know,
I like.
But I want to
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, I want
I
to
was
hear
just
you.
going to start going deep. I was going to go. I like the Nick Gilder song on the first Pat Benatar in the Heat of the Night record that he wrote. I think it was called Rated X. That song.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
dope song.
Dude,
That's a
and I
great.
love.
And it's so Gilder. Like when you listen to it, it's just basically straight up Gilder. But his band, I think, was her band. I believe it was. Uh, uh, Myron Grumbacher on drums, and I could be wrong, but I think it was Neil Giraldo on guitar, who is Pat Benatar's husband and producer.
It was Roxy Roller and all that early stuff. And man, I got to tell you, the first Pat Benatar album, man, I love We Live for Love. That
Blew
song.
my mind. You're a heartbreaker, dream
Great.
maker.
And you know what else? Dude, covered Sweet, No You Don't, which is so great from Sweet.
So
Desert
good.
Hard. I love those.
So
records.
good.
So Butch, I'm so happy to have you here, and your resume is unbelievable. I'm so grateful that you came and did my show, because it's getting us through.
Thanks for having me on.
Kidding me, man? I love you. You know that. So I'm going through your records right now. One of my favorite records. I'm sure we have stories for it, but I want to hear yours. Kiss, Destroyer, the fourth studio album. Fucking. When I heard Detroit Rock City the first time, I was like, into the nighttime world, into fucking those. It just killed me. So talk to me why you love it.
I mean, I don't even know where to start. My first concert ever was Kiss. I was 8 years old. It was 1977 at the Omni in Atlanta. My mom and dad reluctantly took me because I begged and begged and begged to go. I was like, I don't care. Make it my Christmas present. They were doing 2 nights, New Year's Eve. It was the 30th and the 31st of December. And it was life-changing. It changed my life. Like, I mean, I was only 8 at the time, but it was like, I knew the path that I was going to go on was this. And I mean, a lot of rockers have that story, that same story about Kiss, but that was the Love Gun album, which, the only thing I regret is due to my age and whatever is I didn't get
Destroyer tour. You're saying like you wish.
I didn't get exposed in time to see them on the Destroyer tour. The Destroyer tour was 1976, I believe. Yeah. So 77 was Love Gun, Rock and Roll Over.
Both great records too.
Great records. Great records.
You ever hear Nine Snails do Love Gun? That was so badass.
Oh yeah.
It was so great. And I Stole Your Love and all those like great tunes.
Yeah, dude, that album was huge for me. But Destroyer, though, even as a little kid, for some reason, I knew that this record was a step up for the band that paved the way for Love Gun and many, many albums to come. But but that was Bob Ezrin, and Bob Ezrin, the producer, who is a master of his craft, and he did The Wall, for Pink Floyd,
and that's Alice Cooper records.
Alice Cooper, Big Bang Babies,
$1 Billion Babies band.
$1 Billion Babies. He did. Sorry, I quoted an STP lyric just then for some reason. But
STP, you can quote it anytime. I love the
good. My brain gets foggy after all these song titles and album titles. But that album, like just from the get-go, the opener, the epic, like the dude getting in the car and turning on and Kiss is playing on the radio and he's driving, and then it's so cinematic from the get-go. But some of the songs too, you're just like, wait, this is insane. Like Good Expectations, Gene Simmons, singing this like beautiful, like almost Phil Spector-esque.
Yeah, that's what he's going for, right? He was going for like
God, great. Yeah. And it's just
so funny because that side, right? Like Detroit Rock City, fucking King of the Nighttime World is like
back to back, those two.
Ever. Like when it goes, and it goes out of a car crash. And dude, and it's just like comes in.
Yep. Like gotta thunder.
Greatest vocals ever. Paul Stanley's greatest vocals ever.
Man. There's just so much good stuff on there. Sweet Pain. I love Sweet Pain.
Sweet Pain was not a Sweet Pain.
Hey, my love will drive you insane.
Hey, look, we're hanging out with friends, so we can do it. Dude, I love Sweet Pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's Shouted Out Loud is classic.
It's one of their biggest songs ever. It's the live anthem. Shout It Out Loud.
I don't know, Butch, if you know the story, but I loved Kiss, and I was with Alex Coletti, who, comes into my office at MTV and goes, "Hey Matt, what's wrong with the music department?" He goes, "They don't want to do a Kiss Unplugged." I go, "Let's go talk to them." So I walk into the boss's offices and I go, "Look, come on, Kiss. Every record goes gold without any promotion. Let's." And they go, they thought it over, did the Kiss Unplugged. I remember the moment that Peter Criss and Ace Frehley were over the balcony because it was there for all the rehearsals. They're like, "Hey, motherfuckers!" And they were like, so crazy. And then they, of course, did the songs. They started with "Coming Home," one of my favorites from Hotter Than Hell. But then they did the thing, and it changed. They were ready now to do the reunion. So they took me and Alex Coletti out to lunch at Carmine's on 44th Street. And they really appreciated the fact that we fought for them. And, Alex, of course, has done so much work with Kiss since then. He and his brother Roger, who I love. But she calls me. I narrated the documentary called Second Coming, which was the thing where it was the whole thing after. And I remember it well because I'm going to confess something really funny before we do this, but you'll laugh. He's like, Gene offers me one amount of money, and then he goes, I go, "Gene, dude, I've got to do it in a studio. I don't want to spend every cent. I'll do anything for you guys. I want to be part of Kiss's history." So I do that thing. History, right. But the best part of it was I got to do something that was a dream for every Kiss fan ever. And there are 2 lines left on the voiceover. So he takes me to lunch, Gene, and then brings me to rehearsals at Kohl's in LA. And Ace and Peter are in the parking lot, and they go, "Where the fuck have you guys been?" And he goes, "Hey, man, I was taking Matt out to lunch." Paul doesn't show up for a couple hours. What happens is, I don't want to drag this on because I'd rather hear you talk, but I will tell you, dream came true that I look at the set list and Gene goes, "Oh, you like it, man?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to have a go?" So I sang Rock Bottom, 100,000 Years, and Do You Love Me with 3 original members of Kiss. And after I did Rock Bottom, Gene looks at me and goes, "You got a fucking voice. You actually can sing, man. Because you don't sound like you talk. What else you want to do?" And that was when Peter Criss yelled out, "Do You Love Me?" And that was surreal. And it was nuts, man. It was crazy. It was like,
dude, come on.
That was
a dream come true. It was, right?
Yeah, it was beautiful. Beautiful moment for me. But the point is, awesome. Hey, it's about you. It's not about me. And I listen, I interject my stories because our buddy Jonathan said to me, and Mark Maron and other people are like, "Tell your stories too, man. You got to do it." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. I will." Anyway, so yes,
I love hearing your stories. I could listen to you talk all damn night.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, Butch. So Van Halen, Fair Warning, man. What?
Oh, fuck.
That record fucking is. So, all right, there I am. I should be penalized. Another fine.
Dude, okay, so again, the way that parlays into Van Halen from Kiss is I was, growing up a little kid in Cartersville, Georgia, not a lot of exposure to anything hitting on the underground yet. It just didn't happen. You just, whatever was played, whatever single from a band played on the radio station from Atlanta, that's what you heard. And this was right around the dawn of MTV. So it would have been pre being able to discover music via videos. Yes. I remember I had the Love Gun album, and I think I was probably 10 or 11, 12. I don't even remember anymore, but my sister's boyfriend, Phil Orton, he lived a block away from our house. He had this album by this band called Van Halen, and it was Van Halen 1. And so whenever he said, "Hey, I'll trade you for your Kiss Alive, your Kiss Love Gun album for this Van Halen record," I was like, "Sure, let's do it." And I did it and never looked back. I was obsessed with that. From that point, I didn't want to be a drummer because of Peter Criss from Kiss. I wanted to be a fucking guitar player because of Eddie Van Halen. Yeah. And that was massive for me. Was just, it was like music from outer space. It just sounded like a space alien playing guitar. It didn't make any sense how it was that technical, but that awesome and that funky, and that you heard there was jazz fusion and blues and all this mixed into metal. And it was like, that's weird. How I've never heard this before. I'd never really understood how somebody could get this crazy, wild thing happening musically out of guitar like that. But you got David Lee Roth just wailing the blues over it, and with his like banshee screaming, and Alex just an insane drummer, and so locked in because they're brothers, him and Eddie, and it was just mind blowing. And I just became all in on Van Halen from that day forward. I was just drawing the VH on every notebook, on every wall, everywhere I could find it. Later, after a few albums, after Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2, Women and Children First, was Diver Down before or after? I can't remember. I think it was after.
Fair Warning was before Diver Down, right?
Right. So when Fair Warning came out, it was like, oh man, they're mad. They're pissed. Like, this is pissed off. I don't know if they're mad at each other, which in hindsight they were, but it just sounded so angry in the best way. Like Eddie his playing is the most pissed off guitar playing. I don't think I've ever heard any more pissed off guitar playing on any record ever than that one. And it is so dark and badass and greasy and seedy and slimy and like dirty, just everything about that record, with Mean Streets and Sinner's Swing and these are just, sorry, I'm having to remember off the top of my head. I don't have any cheat sheet or anything, but
that record, like,
Push Comes to Shove. Good God. The songs on those records, I Don't Want to Hear About It Later.
And that's like, oddly enough, it's weird that might be one of their least successful records, but real Van Halen fans love Fair Warning. That's like the album.
Of course they do. It's like, it's amazing. I mean, I think it's the benchmark album for them. And I wouldn't say that just because people think that, because you'll see my selections tonight are not always the underground favorites, because I didn't grow up in the underground, so I only knew of the big ones.
By the way, I've never, forget that bullshit. You and I we're about being real. That's what we are. You know what I mean?
Okay.
We're not worried about being. We're cool anyway. I always say, whatever we love, we're fucking cool no matter what we love. And so, and so. I got to tell you, the next album is so important in my life that you picked, News of the World by Queen. And I've got to just let you say this, but I'm going to say this really quick. It's a funny story. My high school girlfriend, Marie, I didn't even remember any of this shit. But she told me, she goes, Matt, you showed up on my doorstep with News of the World in your hand when you were 16. And she goes, I was shocked. She goes, I was like shocked you were there. And you're like, I got to play you this record. And it was like, for me, the first record I heard by Queen was Sheer Heart Attack, one of my favorites. Saw them I saw Night at the Opera, saw Day at the Races, saw the tours, got to write the liner notes for that box set, Crown Jewels. But man, News of the World is like, what a masterpiece. Like the fact
again,
I'm gonna let you talk now. Like, because I want to.
Oh no. There's not much more to say except for We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions back to back. And not only that, but they played them back to back on the radio back then. It wasn't a one song deal. You got both songs and you played both songs back to back. So they were both hits at the same time. And when I hear them now, I can't hear the end of We Will Rock You without hearing I paid my dues. It's just like,
you got that voice. You got that voice, man. I love it. You can do Fred. You can do Fred so good, man.
Well, but he's in my DNA because he's one of my favorite frontmen and singers of all time, if not my favorite. And I just, growing up being into a guy who is classically trained makes no sense to me because it sounds so not rock and roll, but he was so rock and roll. And that album was, to me, so rock and roll. It was as rocking as Sheer Heart Attack.
Yes, it was.
But they were like, they knew they had a chance to be bigger and more broad. And that was this album with The Appeal. And with We Will Rock You, obviously, biggest stadium anthem ever. We Are the Champions. Not only a beautiful song, but also I feel like almost like a battle cry for gay America, because he was fighting the stereotype of, homosexuality and staying in the closet about it his whole career, because he was too scared of it hurting his career. If you can think about a fucked up world we used to live in where that actually mattered,
right?
If you were straight or not. And We Are the Champions is just such a great, and it's just epic. And I love how regal all the songs are. I don't know. It's such a sick record. That one of the deeper cuts on it that I'm really into, that really was one of my favorite songs and still is called "It's Late," and that's the ballad.
It's the best. And
dude,
by the way,
you say you love me. Bow, bow, down.
So great. It was a single that didn't chart in America, and should. No. That song is so brilliant. It goes bang, bang, bang. Just that record. It's late. It's so beautiful.
And right? It's just such a rocker. The end of it.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're talking over each other. I'm sorry.
No, that's my fault. I'm sorry. I'll let you talk. I'm just gonna say also All Dead on that record, like made me like song. Like there was something about that and the harmony on that. Like I was
fight from the inside. Fight from the inside. That's like that song could get resampled as a hip hop jam today. You're welcome. Like it's just boom, go doo doo, doom.
Yeah, we're talking about
so badass. It's so badass. The whole record's and I used to stare at the album cover because it scared the shit out of me as a kid. It was so freaky. It was so like Stanley Kubrick or Orwell. It was just these futuristic giant robots that had the dead members of Queen in their hands with blood dripping off the hands and holding Brian May and one of them and their one's falling. It's so good. Like just, it's like, I mean, if you were into comic books and rock and roll as a kid, that they gave you everything in one album there, because the cover looked like a comic book, like some sort of like weird, dark, imagery. I loved it.
Oh, that record's so important to me too, man.
And the production is amazing on it. I love the production on all those records. Sorry, I have to always kind of mention that I love that a lot of these records, it's because of the production on them as well, because I'm a producer and it's one of my favorite things. I was the liner notes kid reading who engineered and who recorded it. And that stuff mattered as much to me as it did, who the band members were.
Yeah, man, and it's amazing too because you've taken so much of it with everything you do, and you pull from the most beautiful records. Elvis Costello, "My Aim Is True," the first record that he did, and most people don't realize the band was Huey Lewis and the News when they were called Clover. Yeah,
dude. If anybody wants to ever hate on Huey Lewis and the News ever, just go back and listen to that album. That's all Clover. As the backing band and produced by Nick Lowe. I mean,
and Huey was cool, man. Played with Thin Lizzy, Phil Lynott. Like he was just good. That guy, he was rolling around England, man, in those pub rock days.
Dude, he was like his band was almost like, wasn't he like always like he was always getting into like shows by the Specials, right? Because was it the Specials that he produced first? That Nick Lowe produced, or who was it? Was it the Specials? I think it was.
Elvis produced it, right? But the whole deal. It was like that. He produced. Well, actually, Nick Lowe produced some of it, and Elvis did the rest of that first record.
Okay. But he was instrumental in giving Elvis, I think, a lot of his first start, though.
Yeah, he was, and I think it's beautiful. There's that famous story. I just got to make this real quick because I want to hear you talk.
Well, first of all, this is all you need to know.
Oh, dude, you have the the tattoo. You know what? I want to tell you something. Oh, Butch.
Let me tell you something. That record meant a lot to me, and I would honestly, in hindsight, I would tell everybody, don't ever get your idols tattooed on your body if they're still alive, because you're going to run into them in an elevator one day drunk at the Chateau Marmont at midnight, and you're going to freak out and go, oh my God, look at this. And it was like, he and I were the only two people on the elevator, and I was going to my room, and he was he was hitting the buttons, like going, oh, that's nice. He's trying to get off the elevator really fast. I'm like, call me.
Oh, it's the greatest, man. I love that you love that. And My Aim Is True, you picked that album. The first thing I ever heard by him was Welcome to the Working Weekend. I went, what the fuck is this? Now, I'm not angry at all those songs. And of course, Watching the Detectives.
Dude, Watching the Detectives is like, that is still, I put that on all the time as like, what is a badass sounding like drum track. And just the recording of the drums, the opening fill, it's like sounds almost like a drummer in a dryer, but it's obviously an overqualified drummer, though. The band was incredible on it, but it's so good. And just his jazz master guitar shit on that Elvis does. And I mean, it's his voice and his lyrics, that record came. Here's the thing I have to say, and I can't say that I was early on Elvis Costello because I was too young and too much of a little metalhead punk to even get into Elvis. He's too smart for me. I didn't get it. And funny enough, the first time I heard Elvis Costello, and this is great, almost chronological order here. I remember being on vacation with my family down in Destin, Florida, or Panama City Beach, or wherever we would go for spring break vacation. And I had an 8-track player, a mono speaker 8-track boombox with an 8-track player. And I would wear out Van Halen 1 and Van Halen 2 on 8-track. I had the Van Halen 2 one, which was, I'd put it in and I'd listen to it all the time and dance the night away, and all this shit was on it. And it was so great. And I remember hearing a commercial on the radio for Elvis Costello. For some reason, Elvis Costello was coming to town or something. And I was hearing a song playing in the background, and I was like, I'm not into this at all. But that's the first time I heard of Elvis, was listening to Van Halen, which has no relation at all. But I'm going to cut to the 90s, because the 90s is when I was going through a really rough time. I got married early on in my life. I was like I was like 21, and that the marriage went south. Everything went to shit, and my career was in the shitter. We were touring 250 days a year, playing for $100 a night wherever we could get a gig. I basically lived and slept in a van, and was just I was going through a very lonely, sad time. And I remember getting into this record by Elvis Costello at the time, and it just blew my mind. And it was a record, and I would have made it this record in particular, but and it would have been it was a record called All This Useless Beauty, and that was a record that came out in the 90s, but which was a lot of covers on it. But I went back and dug in deep on the catalog, and it was also due to a friend of mine who was my sister's boyfriend at the time, who was this amazing lyricist, who just was he's one of my favorite songwriters that nobody ever heard. And he was like saying, you're getting into Elvis. Let me show you this record. Now let me show you this record. And, it was everything, Imperial Bedroom and Spike and everything later. But what record really resonated with me was My Aim Is True. Like when I put that on and listened down, I'd be like, oh man, this is this is hard on your sleeve, smart lyrics, but punk rock attitude, stripped down production.
I mean, Red Shoes is still one of the greatest songs ever. Angels Want to Wear My Red Shoes.
I love that. So when I used to be disgusted, now I try to be amused.
I love it, man. She said, drop that and left with another guy. That's what you get. Decent anthem. I fucking love that. So good, right? Oh, man, it's a best.
And he's still good.
He's still great. And he's, it's funny. I'm glad I saw him this year's model tour when I was younger, but I'm glad I didn't meet him when he was really angry. Later on, I did a bunch of things with him. I did a thing when he called me, and I did because I'm doing a thing for like American Express or something, or Citibank. And he goes, I'm going to do 2 songs. We'll go on stage. You interview me for 10 minutes. I'll do 2 more songs. And then we did another thing at like this pub that his father knew on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. But I love the guy. We talked about like our My brother has Parkinson's. We talked about his dad. We talked about real shit. And I really love the guy. And of course, I love him as a songwriter. Now, one of my other idols, you have the next album, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Oh.
I bought a row of tickets for $4 for the You're Gonna Get It tour with a bunch of friends. Made up, of course, I was a working class kid. They had to pay for their seats, but we went and saw them do Listen to Her Heart, I Need to Know, and Break Down American Girl. And you picked the album that was his breakthrough. I mean, it was a challenge in life for him to do Damn the Torpedoes. What a great record. Even the Losers is my tune. And also, What Are You Doing in My Life? But I love that. So tell me why you love that record.
I love it because of every song on it. And I loved Tom Petty from the first album. But when this one came out, it was like, I remember the video for Refugee coming on.
Yeah.
On MTV. And I think it was MTV, or it might have been one of those night flight shows or something like that too. And it was just wild because I was like, God, this is cool. This is like, there's something different about this when you're a metalhead or like a little rock and, hard rock lover. Tom Petty still speaks to you. It's dirty and cool enough. Mike Campbell's playing. He's not a shredder. And if that's what you were into at the time, you still had mad respect for Mike Campbell and his tone and his melodies and his riffage was amazing. Like, and the opening riff in Refugee is just bow, bow, down, down, bow, down, down, and it's just so simple and so effective. And then just the way he would deliver the vocals, she got something little know if we don't talk too much about it, just super lazy and sexy and cool as shit.
Yeah, it's got that thing that it was like, wow, this is like nothing else going on. And that's why
he just textbook stoner wardrobe with the blue jean jacket, and you're just like, this is badass. This guy looks like my cool stoner uncle. I love this. And I mean, here comes my girl, even the Losers, Don't Do Me Like That. I mean, it's just all, it's hard to, you can't beat that record. Album cover is one of the coolest looking album covers of all time. Like I've strived to try to even look half as cool as that on any album cover that I'm on the cover of, just like
good, cool, no matter what. But I'll tell you a story. It's from Century City on that album. I did not know that was a place in California as a kid from New Jersey, born in Georgia. But when I was moved to the second hospital after I got hit by the car, tore my head open, broke my leg in half, they brought me to a place called the Century City California Rehabilitation Institute. And that's where I did all my physical therapy. And what do you think I was thinking of the minute they pulled me in there? Tom Petty, Century City. Like,
you were singing it. Yeah, you were singing it.
Like it was, it's like every song about a place is in your head, and Petty is just one of my,
And then just to know that he was born and raised in rocking in one state over from me in the South. Gainesville, Florida. It was just like, how did this guy come out of Gainesville, Florida? I mean, this is between that and fucking Skynyrd. I mean, I'm sad I didn't even put a Skynyrd record on the list. I could have. Having 7 records was not near enough.
No, Matt. I know it's not enough. I'm sorry I do that. I hate to do it to anybody, but dude, my daughter Maya lives in Jacksonville, and all my best friends do it. I got to know the whole Skynyrd family. Like everybody. All like Ronnie Van Zant's daughter and everybody, and man, I love those people. They're
Florida, man. Northeast Florida had it in the water.
That's a cool city, man. It's like it's great. There's a lot of history.
Dude, I used to play the game Jackrabbits all the time.
I always tell people, I'm like, do you realize that band, the Classics 4, came from Jacksonville, the one who did "Oh Storm" and and Spooky and all that song, Traces of Love, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, you picked Spooky's one of the greats, and Atlantic River section, right? Let me let you talk. Sorry, Butch. Let me talk to you about the next record, who's, I talk about him pretty often on the show, and I'm not going to repeat the story because people can go back and watch the episodes about how Bruce Springsteen was so kind to me, so nice to me, and like stood up for me and whatever, you know, like that's you got to go back and watch other episodes. But Born to Run is one of the greatest records of all time, and you picked this record, so talk to me.
Yes. Again, sorry. I know it's an obvious one, and I know a lot of people, like a lot of like serious songwriters, will go like, "Oh, Nebraska's my record," and I'm like, "Is it?" And I know a lot of people. And by the way, it's fucking great. It's great. I get it. Recorded on a 4-track with one microphone in a New York City hotel. Awesome. That didn't speak to me. It's a great record, but that's not my record. My record that spoke to me and spoke to probably millions and millions of other Bruce Springsteen fans around the world, and especially in rural America, was Born to Fucking Run.
Fuck yeah, it was.
again,
Cursed.
No cooler guy on the album cover with a guitar. It's just like there's a pattern here. You go back to back from Damn the Torpedoes to this record, and it's both dudes holding guitars, and they couldn't look any cooler. And he was just the still is the epitome of a showman, a songwriter, and a dude. He's just badass. And that record has, oh man, when you go back and that was the same thing. I was late on that too, because you know why? Because of metal, growing up in metal and growing up in like hard rock and stuff. You're just not as open to a lot of that stuff a lot of times. So I probably heard Bon Jovi before I heard Bruce Springsteen. And no offense to Bon Jovi, but it's like, it's clearly his thing is Bruce Springsteen. And you know, very much so. And so I probably bypassed and dismissed when I would see this bearded construction worker yelling at me on MTV. And I was like, that's not my thing. But I didn't give myself enough time to take it in and digest how incredible of a lyricist that he is. And that was what it was all to me. You know, you can have all the like production and the hair and the fluff and the melodies and the big guitar solos all day long, but if you're not saying anything, then sorry, it's not gonna age well with me, especially being 50 now. Like, I care about a good lyric more than I care about a fucking guitar solo. So I can put those on, and man, and there's just a mood and a vibe, and I appreciate it even more going back and looking at all these videos now in the age of YouTube, where you can look at, you know, videos of Springsteen making this record with Iving and just slaving over it and redoing it 100 times and not able to get the sound out of his head onto tape that he wanted. He was chasing and chasing and chasing. He was a perfectionist. And man, when you put on Thunder Road put on Born to Run.
He's the one. Night. I love Night. And Jungle Land, of course, back to
Jungle
back.
Land is the jam.
Thunder Road
what an album ender. What an album closer, you know.
Yeah,
Down in Jungle Land. And you're just like, and then it just epic, you know.
One of the greatest records of all time. And you know, I love my two favorites are that and Darkness. I love those two records.
Darkness on the Edge of Town.
One of my favorites, because Candy's Room is like fucking always been one of my favorites. So sorry about the language. I'm trying to like stop myself from cursing, but I will say
I'm not helping. I'm baiting
you. Being real, so people can get over it. Born to Run, the recording, is one of the most insanely epic sounding things ever. From the boom, boom, it's like that recording is one of the greatest things ever recorded.
Are you saying Born to Run or
Born to Run? The song Born to Run. It's like, dude, it's insane. Like it's
so good.
Like
it's so good.
A rocket, and then it's like one of the greatest things.
We were covering it on tour. We were covering it on tour about 5 years ago, and I remember we played the Stone Pony that night, and I was just like, I'm not taking it out of the set. I don't care if this is too on the nose. And I was just like, right before we kicked into it, I was like, sorry, bartenders, fucking deal with it.
They're very proud in Asbury. You know, it's part of my stomping ground. You know, I ran a radio station there for years. You know, we're all very proud of it. You know, Bruce, of course. He's the real deal. Always has been. Always given so much of himself. But that song, you're right. Born to Run is one of the greatest things, in my opinion. If I make a list of 100 songs or 50, maybe even 20, Born to Run's on that list because it's just
I think it would have been a record that Yeah, dude. And I think if I would have been a, you know, in a different place in a different time when that record came out and a little bit older, like late teens, this would have been the soundtrack to every summer night. It was just such a soundtrack to small town America, beautiful, romantic, hot, sweaty summer nights. And
Yeah,
I can put it on now on a hot, beautiful summer night now, and
yeah,
it still rings and resonates like it came out yesterday.
it does.
Beautiful.
It does. It never loses its fucking power for me. That's the thing about Born to Run, man. I just like that song will always be one of the greatest things, in my opinion, ever recorded. I'm grateful in my lifetime.
Agreed.
The man, got to know him a bit, like, and I know that he listened to me a lot. We had conversations, and he's one of the greatest. And yeah, I consider myself, very grateful that he backed me through a lot of shit. And that's all.
We love him.
We love him, and I love him, and I'm proud of him being from my state of New Jersey and your state. What's funny? Born in Athens, Georgia, raised in Jersey. We always joke about that.
Yeah, well, man, no wonder you love music so much, because you got like you got both of some of the best cities for music ever. And I'm really bummed I don't have an R.E.M. record on this list too. But like, we didn't have enough we didn't have enough albums to pick
love
from.
R.E.M. so much. You and I both do. I know that. I mean, God, it's amazing. But I want to talk to you about your last record, because we talked about Leslie Fram earlier, and I love her. I mean, her and I went in the studio with Rick Nielsen, and we went in with Cheap Trick when they were doing the Super Bowl commercial for the Green Police instead of the Dream Police, and it was winter, and we're hanging out. Robin's got this like crazy hat on. I mean, I love Rick and Robin and Tom, those guys, Bunny. I mean, like everybody. I love that band. Huge guy forever. Like and they're the sweetest, coolest dudes ever. Tell me why.
Amazing. Rick and I become buddies.
So, you have? That's great.
Yeah, and that's big for me, because also one of my biggest influences was Cheap Trick and Rick Nielsen on guitar. And so that was a record that when it came out,
game, right? Stop This Game, like things like that. Was that on the record? Yeah, Stop This Game. Was that on that album? It was, right? Was Stop This?
I don't know.
Later. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember which record that was on.
I don't know. I mean, it was
so great. And you loved like Heaven Tonight too, would Take It, You're Taking Me Back. I love the power pop.
Voice, dude. But Voices, that's the song. First of all, Dream Police is incredible. Let's back up. I got the record as a Christmas present from my grandmother, which means that my sisters told my grandmother what to get me, because my grandmother's not going to know to buy me a fucking Cheap Trick record. It would have been like Edie Gourmet or Lawrence Welk's Greatest Hits. But but quite honestly, I didn't care, because I got it, and I had to take whatever I could get, musically at the time, because we didn't have money. We didn't have a lot of money, and we certainly didn't have a lot of selections for albums. So whenever something would come out and it was given to me as a gift, I cherished it, and I wore that record out. It wasn't like just like, oh yeah, I'll listen to it once and throw it aside. I would obsess. And open the wrapper, that album cover, come on. I mean, talk about, again, when you're a kid and album covers can like influence you to want to listen to a record and entice you. Why would you not want to listen to this record? You had like all four of the dudes dressed in all white, in an all white, very 80s, almost like German art, high art, setting, like they were in the early 80s. And it was they're all wearing, police outfits, all white with fucking guns and all this. And they're just like, and smoke all over the ground. And it was the coolest thing. And then you opened up the center, the gatefold, and you opened it up, and there was a police lineup, and the police lineup was all of the members handcuffed to each of the members of Cheap Trick in their white Dream Police outfits, and then out in the audience is the back of the band members' heads pointing out members in the lineup, and it's just like, that is the coolest. And I put it on going, please be as good as the album cover. Because
I was wrong. I gotta say, all shook up was the one with "Stop This Game." It's funny, like,
Yes.
you know, it bled together with me. But you're right,
Yeah.
Dream Police was
But you
such a
put on
big.
that, dude, you put on that first song and you put on Dream Police, and it's one of the coolest songs ever written. I mean, it really is one of the coolest fucking rock songs. It's so stoner anthem, just it's so good. And then you got like the breakdown where Rick Nielsen sings, you know, I'm wide awake, they won't let me alone, you know, and it's just, it's so good. And then it goes into, you know, Way of the World. I've been running. I've been
the way of the world. Love that record.
Yeah,
man.
And then Voices just blows my mind. That's like, to me, still to this day, I would play that song around a campfire, and it's so good. You didn't know what you were looking for till you heard the voices in your ear. So good.
So great, right? I love it, man, dude. That was the first.
It's me again. Playing to see again.
Butch, those guys are the shit, and they're the coolest guys too. Like, dude, like they're just the nicest dudes ever, you know. And
coolest dudes.
Stories about how, you know, like Rick told me, like, he's such an Anglophile, you know, that he would, just like Kiss. It was a very interesting, different way. But Gina Paul would listen to any WFM, things from England. Scott Muni was the DJ, and the nicest thing ever, a compliment for me. Scott Muni was a big New York City DJ for years, and his kids said to me on the anniversary of his death one year, they go, "Dude, you're like the one heir parent to our dad." And I was like, "Oh man, it's a major compliment. I don't know if I can." I go, "That's really beautiful to say." I go, "But thank you." And, you know, I love their father. And but those guys, Rick Nielsen, Robin, those guys, we were like, they loved English music so much that they ordered the NME, the Sounds, and the Melody Maker, the English magazines, so they would know what was coming out in England. So they loved the Move, and that's why they did California Man. And like,
yeah, exactly.
Like they dug the Move, Wizard, like, you know, Slade, and, you know, T-Rex, and all the great stuff. And I love that about them, because I just love the idea of a great song that has that like anthemic pop chorus. I love that shit. I mean, you know,
they appreciate it. They appreciate a chorus, and it's awesome. And I mean, Rick is like, he it's awesome because now we'll just text each other, and he's so sweet. Like, I mean, I remember he sent me lyrics to Surrender, because my son's favorite song at the time was Surrender. My son's only 12, but like he's grown up, shocker, listening to rock and roll, and likes rock and roll a lot more than pop or R&B or hip hop. So he's so he sent my kid he sent him a copy of the lyrics that were from the actual hotel stationery when he wrote Surrender. And I thought that was so cool.
That's so awesome, man.
And he also sent me and he sent me a poster, because Rick is awesome. He's such a sarcastic kind of a, you know, he's a funny dude. And before I'd even met him, I was friends with his kids, and they came to a show of mine once and brought a poster of that, and they said, "My dad wanted you to have this," and it was a poster of Rick. He was going to try to come to the show, but instead I got the poster, and the poster was of him, and it had in Sharpie written at the bottom. It said, "Dear Butch, so glad I could not be there tonight. Love, Rick."
It's so funny. You know, it's a great story about how he and Tom Peterson went over, like they went to England like in '67 or whatever, and they were like, you know, "We got to go to England, man. We're going over there." And they couldn't even really afford a hotel, and they bought a mono record player, and they bought Beggar's Banquet, I think it was. No, maybe it was before that. But they bought Sgt. Pepper, and they're listening to it in a hotel room, and they had to keep putting like pence to keep the heat on in the winter in his hotel. Like, they just flew over there and said, "What the fuck? We're going there." That's the greatest story, you know. Goes,
that's amazing.
He goes, "We're sitting here." He goes, "Dude, we loved English music so much that we went over there, and me and Tom are like, oh shit, you know, it's like, how do we keep the heat on in this room?" But it's like,
that's amazing.
That's a great story, man.
Dude, Rockford, Illinois, man.
Yep, Rockford, you got it, man. You know,
something in the water.
We got one more. You know what's funny? the album list is done, but I'm gonna let you tell me one more thing about R.E.M. Just because we got to bring it back to Georgia for you and me. So
Yeah.
tell me what R.E.M. If you had to pick an R.E.M. album or song, what do you love?
Probably my first memory ever of them, which was South Central Rain. That was the first time I saw that I saw the video on MTV. It was probably on 120 minutes or whatever version of the alternative.
Cutting Edge, I think it was back then. It was like a
Cutting Edge. Yeah. And I just remember seeing the video and all of them in this monochrome black and white clothing with black and white drums and guitars. And Peter Buck was playing a black and white 360 Rickenbacker, and it sounded like the Byrds or like Petty or like whatever, but even more cerebral and just with Stipe's just beautiful melancholy vocal delivery. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So good. And and Mike Mills always with his backgrounds were just so beautiful. And like, I loved how his counter melodies were always so interesting. He would always do like this, like he would almost take a lead vocal in the background, sort of like the Edge would do to Bono on U2 songs on their early records.
Yeah.
Which the parallels weren't that far off back then on early U2 records versus, early R.E.M. They were all taking from the same, they were drinking all from the same cup, Yeah,
exactly. And those records sounded so good.
Oh.
The South Central Rain, like those songs like that, Fall on Me, Don't Go Back to Rockville. Those songs are fucking I gotta stop the record. Yeah, I love that, man. It's very interesting, like how sad and melancholy at the same time, how he loved it, how beautiful it was. And those records are so good.
Man, what a career. And our world is better for that band being in it,
Yeah. It's funny, like last time I interviewed Stipe, it was me and Leslie, and it was the nicest thing in the world. Me and Leslie are on the air with him in New York, and he goes, I can't think of two people I'd rather be interviewed by in the world. Thank you, man. I mean, I'm just saying that because it means the world to me that it came back from those guys giving this band the bongos from New Jersey, who I love, from Hoboken, the 7-inch of Sitting Still, and of course, Radio for Europe. Anyway,
Radio for Europe, yeah.
But anyway, Butch, man, you and I could talk for hours. I think what we're going to do, you, me, and Jonathan are going to have dinner, get some friends together, and just talk about, do what we do. This is what we were doing. The funny thing is, the concept of this show, as I came up with it, was like, kind of like what we do. We talk about records we love. And I wanted your fans to hear what really moved you, makes you tick, and what you care about. And I'm really excited about the new record, American Love Story, coming out in May. It's May 8th? Or what date is it coming out?
Yeah, May 8th. Yep.
And I just want to tell you how much I really appreciate you doing this. I love you. You've always been such an amazing dude, great friend. You did, we connected, with artists in so many ways over the years. And I know your fans love you so dearly. And to me, that's the most beautiful thing in the world is your fan base. And you always treat them with so much love and respect. That's what it's about.
Well, thank you, Matt. And I love you too. And the thing that's great about it is, I remember meeting you the first time, and it was always, I was excited to meet you because I had been watching you on MTV for so long and going like, this guy loves music. You can just tell when someone loves music and knows it and eats it, lives it, breathes it, drinks it. And that was me growing up. So I was like, that he and I have to be friends.
Yeah, great. And I'm so glad we became friends. I loved you. I met you, and I just want to tell you, I'm so excited. Thank you for doing this. And, again, for everybody at Crush Management who helped us out, like Capone and Bob, and of course, Jonathan Daniel, and all the crew over there, all
Dream Team,
all my friends. And also, like all the people who work on the show, Chris Trevero, Kerry Brown, Linda Perry, my friend Andre from Proper Portions, my friend Ann Glenn for keeping me sane, like a lot of other things. It's really funny because, I am so much loving doing this show. So grateful. And Butch, having you on today was like, I was so looking forward to it. And it was fun, man. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun. I loved it. I loved it very much. I could do this. I could do it every day.
Dude, you know what? Maybe one day we'll do something together. Like we should do something like Even if it's a weekly, we'll do something cool together. Where we
I love it.
We'll have to reconvene about that. But thank you for doing this, Butch. Much love to you, man.
Thanks for having me, my man.
I appreciate it so much, man. Tomorrow we have Johnny Resnick from the Goo Goo Dolls. Thursday, we've got Ed Roland from Collective Soul, another Georgia boy who I'm great friends with, who I love very much. And then Friday, of course, Pete Wentz, who's fantastic, from Fall Out Boy, look, it's hanging with all my friends. It's the best. Like this, that's what this is about. I may be in a lonely place, but I'm not lonely because I'm there with my friends talking about music. That's what matters. I want to tell you all, please stay safe. Much love to you. Thanks to Music Cares. Everything that you do, just stay close to the people you love. Let them know every day that you love them. The people in your life. Always tell them you love them. You just don't know what tomorrow will bring. And that's a rule I live by. Anyway, so that's it. It's called In a Lonely Place. Butch, thanks, brother. Okay? And,
thank you, Matt.
All right, I'll see you soon. This is on We Are Here, and it's In a Lonely Place. I'll be back with you tomorrow, 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. Keep the music in your heart. Love you all.
So